year that we're continuing to have on doing something that's very important to a lot of people in Florida, and that's fighting cancer. And there's a variety of ways to do that. I'm joined here. First, I want to thank Wolfson's Children's Hospital for having us and hosting us. We're joined here by our wonderful First Lady, my wife Casey, our Surgeon General, Dr. Joe Latipo, our ACA Secretary, Siobhan Harris, President and CEO of Baptist Health, Michael Mayo, Allegra Jaros, of course, President of Wolfson's Children's Hospital, President of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, Lisa Shuloff, President and CEO of Nicholas Children's Health System, Matthew Love, and then we also have many members of Nemours Children's Health. And we've worked with all of you guys over the years. I think we've done events at probably every one of your facilities over the years, and we really appreciate all you do, particularly for the pediatric care, and in this instance, what we're going to be able to do for pediatric cancer. We're also joined here by our Senator, Clay Yarborough from Jacksonville, has done a great job for you guys. As well as Reps Michael, Duggan, and Black. And I want to thank the doctors, researchers, and caregivers who are also with us here today, not only from Wolfson's, but also from our other premier children's hospitals, as I've mentioned, Johns Hopkins All Children in St. Pete, Nemours Children in Orlando, and Nicholas Children's in Miami. These institutions are helping to lead Florida forward in one of the most important fights that we face, and that's the fight against cancer. I don't think there's a single person in this state who has not been impacted by cancer, either directly or indirectly. Many Floridians are suffering from cancer or have recovered from cancer, including my wife Casey. You know family members, you know neighbors, friends, coworkers. I mean, it really is something that has a huge, huge reach in terms of the impacts that it has on our state. And of course, we're not alone. This is happening all across the United States. And so we've worked really hard to answer the call, to do whatever we can do to make a big difference in this regard, because we know how wide the impacts, the positive impacts can be with some of the research that's being done and some of the other breakthroughs that we continue to see. Now, if you look at the state of Florida, so since 2019, not even including this year, what we're going to highlight, you know, we've done over $800 million in cancer research and treatment funding, which is an increase of 114% from prior to my time. This year in the budget, you know, you're over $200 million for the various initiatives that we have. And so that's a huge, huge token of support. And it should be noted, the way we approach this stuff in Florida, I signed a budget at the end of June that spends less than the previous budget, and that budget, after my line item vetoes, spent less than the previous year's budget overall in total. Not a lot of places are doing that, where they're very responsible with how you use the money, but we've also, over that period of time, paid off. So at the end of this fiscal year, we have paid off all the history of Florida, 41% of the state's outstanding debt. This fiscal year will bring us to almost 50%. Just in a 6 or 7 year period, we've been able to knock that out. Again, not a lot of other places are doing that. We've also been able to reduce taxes more than has ever been reduced in a similar period of time in the history of the state of Florida. If you look at our overall budget footprint, you know, I hear, you know, I got to follow these things in these other states because it affects us. You know, they elect this guy in New York City. If they do that, you're going to see more people kind of move businesses to Florida. It's just going to happen. Like, and I'm not even asking for that to happen. And obviously, I don't want Florida to replicate policies in places like New York. But the reality is there is a response that happens when you see failed policies put into place. And so we now have probably 4 million more residents than New York State. They're 19.5 million. We're probably pushing 23.5 million right now, but we're certainly over 23. So we have 3 to 4 million more residents than they do, and yet their budget is over twice the size of our budget. How does that happen? I know you wouldn't want to go to the DMV there. You'd rather get your license here. I know the roads are a lot better here. I know our schools are performing higher. So, you see this. So we've done it right. But even though we've done that and been very responsible with that, what we have done is focus on things that really make an impact for the state of Florida. For example, we've done more to increase teacher salaries, and we just did another $110 million increase, total of $1.35 billion for our teacher funding this year. We've done a lot to accelerate infrastructure projects because state's growing. We have areas of the state that have really bad traffic. You have some spots here in Northeast Florida, but you ain't seen nothing yet if you go down a couple of these spots in Orlando, a couple of these other spots. So we've worked to say rather than start those middle of next decade, let's start them now, let's finish them 5, 10, or 15 years ahead of schedule. So we took resources, we did that, and it's already having a positive impact, but that'll have a big positive impact. We also, last week I was down in Marco Island to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of the Army, because I've asked the President, delegate us more authority to be able to move these Everglades projects. We do our projects very quickly, and when there's hiccups, we take action and get new people in there to do it, which we did on the C-43 reservoir. But we can do some of this stuff quicker. President agreed, so we signed this memorandum. But if you look at what we've done in that space over my tenure, truly, truly historic. You've never seen anything like that in the entire history of Florida, and certainly in recent history. And so that is something that's going to have decades and decades of impact on Floridians in a really positive way for culture, for recreation, for clean drink water, all this stuff. So we've done that and dedicated huge resources. So we're doing things even as we're, and we have the smallest state government in America per capita if you look at our employees. So even as we're doing all that, you're seeing really impactful things done that really make a positive difference in the lives of Floridians. And I think that we're celebrating the success of this most recent budget with respect to all these items in cancer research and funding that are really, really important. And all of that was fully funded. All of that has come through. And I know people say, oh, well, this committee didn't know. It all landed. It all's doing what we needed to do. And I definitely want to thank President Ben Albritton of the Florida Senate. He's been a huge, huge advocate of this, as have other Senate presidents like Kathleen Passidomo, Wilton Simpson in the past. They really believe in this. And this is going to make a huge, huge difference. So what are we looking at here? Well, one, the Casey DeSantis Cancer Research Program was funded almost $130 million. That will strengthen the quality and competitiveness of cancer care across Florida. It will direct funds to Florida's 4 hospitals that have NCI designations and facilities that are seeking NCI designations. So we have Moffitt, we have Mayo here in Jacksonville, you have Shands in Gainesville, and Sylvester in Miami-Dade County. Supports a statewide biomedical research strategy, one that's directly responsive to the needs of Florida's patients and researchers, and this program has served as the backbone of the state's innovation efforts. We don't want to just support isolated projects, but we want to build an integrated statewide approach that drives long-term progress. This consortium of National Cancer Institute CARES program was established by the Florida legislature in 2014. 2022 was renamed after the First Lady in recognition of her successful recovery from breast cancer, and we're really pleased that we were able to do that. Under the First Lady's leadership, the Cancer Connect Collaborative is the first of its kind national model focused on accelerating research, sharing best practices, and turning data into action. Florida is really unique in doing this, and I think it's a really great innovative approach. We don't want barriers that slow progress. We're all in this together. We want to get the job done. And so you have guiding pillars of this collaborative data, best practices, innovation, honesty, and funding. And it brings together both public and private stakeholders to reshape how cancer care is delivered in Florida. Now, through the Cancer Collaborative, the state established the Cancer Connect Collaborative Incubator, which is now funded at $30 million. This incubator is designed to focus on areas of practice that are often underserved, like pediatric cancer treatment, which is only 1% of all cancer cases. Every 5 years, the collaborative will identify and specialize a new area of focus, and for the first 5-year term, that focus will be pediatric cancer, and that's why we have our Children's Hospital here today. So this makes Florida a major targeted investment in pediatric cancer research right here amongst our 4 children's specialty hospitals. And this will have a good impact, certainly I think in the near term, but over the long term, I think we're really building something that's really, really special. We want families, I mean, we obviously don't want families to have to deal with a case of pediatric cancer, but as long as that happens, we want them to know that they've got the best options right here in the state of Florida. They don't have to fly halfway around the country just to be able to get care for their son or daughter. And these hospitals, as I mentioned, Wolfson, Johns Hopkins, Nemours, and Nicholas will be eligible for multi-year grants that allow them to expand clinical trials, improve treatment protocols, and advance real-world cures. We're not just focusing on funding projects, we're focusing on achieving outcomes, and outcomes for patients. Florida's home. I mean, our population is 6.5% of the nation, and we have similar 6% of all nationwide pediatric cancer cases. We do have a clear path to keep more of our children cancer-free. We need to take that, and so this collaborative incubator is building on our investment in the fight against cancer. It is driving collaboration, eliminating silos, and making sure that groundbreaking treatments get to patients faster. Part of the reason we do some of this is not every research is likely to yield financial benefit. And also, like the private industry, they do a lot, right? But ultimately, they need a return on that investment if they're going to put a lot of private capital up. And so there's some things that may be a little bit more difficult. Maybe the prospects aren't quite as good. And some of the stuff may not ultimately be successful, but that's really the price you pay to be able to make some major breakthroughs. And I think the Florida Cancer Innovation Fund really follows through that. This was established in 2023. It just received it initially was funded at $20 million. It just received a $30 million support in this year's budget. And what they're looking to do there is support smaller startup and even rural entities. And part of that is just the fact that, yes, we have some big established institutions, and that's great, and we want them to do well. But there's also needs beyond that, and particularly in different geographical parts of the state of Florida. So this is something that I think is really going to make a difference. And here's some success stories in that regard. An initiative led by University of West Florida and partners to train rural healthcare workers to improve breast cancer detection in underserved communities. University of Florida's Plasma DNA Project aims to personalize treatment by identifying ineffective therapies earlier, minimizing unnecessary side effects. Mayo Clinic researchers working to detect pancreatic cancer earlier by targeting earlier biomarkers, offering hope against one of the deadliest forms of cancer. And at FSU, scientists combining therapies to improve outcomes for BRCA-related cancers like breast, ovarian, and pancreatic. And those are just a few examples of how Florida is turning innovation into action. We have a strategy that prioritizes transparency, collaboration, and bold patient-centered programs. As of 2022, there are more than 18 million cancer survivors in the United States. In the next 15 years, sadly, that number is expected to grow even more. We need to continue to work hand in hand to make Florida a place of hope when it comes to treating this very, very terrible disease. And none of this would have been possible without the advocacy of my wife and our First Lady, Casey DeSantis. And when you have something happen like this, I mean, there's certain times in life as people get older, they tend to have more afflictions. Not that that's easy, but when you were facing something like she was facing, mother of 3 very young kids, prime of your life, you don't necessarily think that something like this, may happen. Obviously, we know it's a possibility, but you just kind of, I didn't think it would happen to us kind of deal. And so when that did, that was a big deal. It was a difficult fight, but I think her, perseverance for that and really coming out on the other side with the help of some great folks at Moffitt Cancer Center down in Tampa, really she's now served as an inspiration for a lot of people who are also facing what she had to face. And everywhere we go, someone will come up to us and say that someone they know or even them has been inspired by her fight, and that's been important enough. But she didn't just sit on her hands. She said, how can we make a difference? How can we further this type of research? And how can we do things that will help people who may end up in her predicament? And so all the stuff we've done now to help against cancer in the last few years has really been under her leadership. So I really appreciate what she's been able to do. And it's my honor to turn the stage over to her.
Well, this is cool. I mean, I'm just so happy and honored and thankful for the legislature and the leadership of the governor to be here to have this historic announcement of how this benefits not only the community but the state as a whole. And I just have to tell you, we've lost some friends. Judy Zatello, who is a hero in this community, who battled pancreatic cancer, I think for like 6 years. I think she would be looking down on us right now, very proud that we've been able to secure this funding and that we're able to really give people hope, because you remember her charity, Champions, still on there. Look it up, Champions of Hope. And she really was a driver in this community. I've had the chance to meet Griffin. He was a patient. He's doing excellent. He was a little boy that lost his arm to cancer. I actually ran a 10K, and it was not the best experience for me because I should have trained a little bit more, but whatever. But I ran in his honor because I wanted to raise awareness about the struggles of what it takes to battle some of these really deadly, very difficult diseases. And I just want to talk a little bit about my experience. When you get that diagnosis, and I'll never forget because I collapsed into his arms when, he was the one that answered the call because I wasn't strong enough to answer the call at that time to find out whether or not I had cancer. And so he was there to hold me as he's been through this entire process. But there are times where, when you have a diagnosis like this, you go to bed at night and you want to wake up and you want to think everything was just a bad dream. But every morning you wake up and you realize that you're facing a reality of a cancer diagnosis, and it is extremely difficult. But every day you got to get up and you got to fight, and I'm fighting for my kids, I'm fighting for the governor, because I'm not going to quit. And so he says, when you go through that, and, I'm thinking about, going through my chemotherapy, which was not the most pleasant thing in the world, but, you got the cold cap on, and you got the gloves on your hands and your feet so you don't get the neuropathy, and you're trying to watch Netflix, but it's kind of hard to watch Netflix when you're stuck to a bed for like 4 hours, and you're trying to deviate your attention somewhere else from the reality. But if you had told me then when I was going through that we would have secured this much funding to provide so much hope for so many people, I would have, I don't know, well, with this guy, anything's possible, but I don't know if I would have said that that's a reality. But I mean, I hope people realize just how special this is, how Florida continues to lead on behalf of the people who want hope, who want to benefit. There are friends that I know right now that are going through hell, and if they knew that the opportunities to be able to have hope, that they can get through it, just like I did, because the state of Florida is investing in ensuring that they have good outcomes and good treatments and good procedures and all of that. I mean, that's just very special. And so with the funding, with the Casey DeSantis, which you never really want to have something like that named after you, but I do appreciate, the fact that they did it, and it really is, special to have that continue to go on. But when you look at that, and you look at it going to the nationally accredited cancer institutes, and the Surgeon General and I were talking about this a little earlier, they're doing amazing things at Moffitt and Sylvester and UF, and obviously Mayo, right in your backyard, amazing things. One of the things I think we're going to work on is ensure that whatever they're learning and whatever they're uncovering and best practices, man, we share that with everybody, right? Because St. Vincent's down the road, they need to know of the good procedures and all of the things that are happening in these really great institutions that are attracting a lot of talent, that we're getting a lot of good research dollars. That's really important. The Innovation Fund is, I think this is huge. I mean, that applies to any hospital. Any novel technology or procedure or whatever can apply to the Department of Health. And really what's fascinating about that, too, is the grants go out quarterly. Because the Surgeon General, and we've talked about, we're at war with cancer. We don't want to wait for a fiscal year to then do all these grants. Like, let's go. If somebody knows that they've got a good idea and they want to put, gas on the brush fire to try to make an impact, like, you should get that funding quickly. And so Wolfson Children's, in addition to the funding that you got for your incubator with the pediatrics, you can apply for those funds. And let's go. Man, let's beat this thing. We're at war with cancer, and we need to win. And we're going to win in the state of Florida. I believe that because you have good people, good institutions, the backing of the taxpayer, and people who really want to make a difference. And then the third component of the funding, which is I think really important, and I wish Representative Garrison could be here. I know that he tried very hard to maneuver his schedule, and he's been a great advocate for your community. But we made a trip up here, and we met here at Wolfson. I don't even remember how long ago. Like, life comes at you fast, but it was a little while ago. And we sat around and we talked about the importance of incentivizing pediatrics. And if you think about it, it's such a small, thank goodness, a small percentage of the population who's dealing with cancer, right? Is it like 6%, 8%, or something like that of all of the cancer? So you have to invest in everything that's a little bit smaller, right? So the needles are smaller, the whatever you need to use to provide good services to children, the expertise, and all of these things. You want to have hospital systems have the ability to be able to invest in that. And so now you're going to have, you already have 4 great hospital systems, but we're going to be able to incentivize them. So anyone across the state, God forbid they have a child who's diagnosed with cancer, they're going to know that they have 4 good, and beyond, right? But really 4 good specialized hospitals for pediatrics, and that's a big game changer because you don't want, Griffin, he's such a special kid, and his mom, they got good quality of care here. You don't want anybody thinking that they have to go to another state to be able to beat this. You can beat it in Jacksonville. You can beat it, in any part of the state in some of these great institutions. So this is cool. This is special. This for me is I hope people realize when you get an opportunity to make a difference, and this is something that is very humbling to me, what do you do with it? And, cancer, I couldn't even say that word for a while. I wanted to stick myself in a closet and never talk about it. But if I have the opportunity to use a hellish experience that I went through to be able to benefit the people of this state, then I'm just honored to be able to do it. Thanks.
All right, Surgeon General Joe Latipo.
Well, hey, good morning. Thank you very much. That was just wonderful to hear what First Lady Casey DeSantis had to share about her own experience and why she finds so much meaning in these efforts that we've made because of our leadership at the state level, her leadership, our lawmakers. So I'm completely aligned with all that, and it was really wonderful to hear all of that, really wonderful. And, it's really something. I mean, probably most people in this audience are parents, and there's just nothing, nothing affects you like your child being sick, at least, especially if you're, I suppose it'll be that case even when the kids are older. My kids are still small, and just the threat, the possibility of them being ill. There's just, it stops me just dead in my tracks, and the bravery of parents who have a child who has a major diagnosis, particularly a cancer diagnosis. I can't imagine 1% of it. It's not even something I can imagine being in that situation because it's too overwhelming for me. And, we in the Department of Health, we talk a lot about prevention. It's part of why I'm personally an enormous advocate of exercise, of physical activity, of healthy eating as much as possible. I'm not, there are perfectionists out there, and I'm not an advocate for perfection, but I'm an advocate for really making, daily, steady efforts to take care of yourself because, the research shows it matters, common sense shows it matters, you will know it matters too, because you're going to feel better. So the prevention side is where we spend a lot of our energy, but thank God for the treatment side too, when unfortunately people still become sick. So the ability for this funding to be able to support research and investigation and develop therapies is, I mean, I can't, because I just can't even begin to put myself in the place of those families dealing with this. I really can't accurately even convey the value, but I'm very grateful for our researchers who are working in this area and are able to develop treatments that reduce suffering and extend the lives and the quality of lives of children who are afflicted with cancer. The First Lady also mentioned sort of the sharing of resources, and my sense, I'm a physician for adult patients. My sense is that the pediatricians, they're probably more collaborative than the adults. There's probably more competition in the adult space, but I think it's something to keep an eye out on. So certainly there's been a lot of wonderful innovation, but the introduction of commercial interests is something we should all be very wary of, because it changes the types of, for example, treatments that are investigated. Oftentimes it actually diminishes the value of treatments that even become approved, and certainly there's been a lot of discussion over the last several months about our FDA approval process for different treatments, and those debates, and are we being too lenient? Are we not being strict enough? Should we change what the primary outcomes are? Is this the right primary outcome? Is this stringent enough? Is this actually meaningful to patients? Those questions are very important, and I think we should all just kind of keep that in mind, because that's a story that's still being written. So, yeah. So thank you again to our lawmakers, and I'm really glad that we're working in this area.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Governor and the First Lady for their steadfast leadership and dedication to the people of Florida, and for continuing to champion innovation and solutions that bring forward results that makes our state the best in the nation. And to the First Lady, I want to thank you for just being you, for taking your personal experience and turning that into a passion that I have firsthand seen change lives countless times over. It's also great to be here at Wilson Children's Hospital. Thank you for being a leader among Children's Hospital providing cancer care. A cancer diagnosis at any age is life-changing, but certainly when it's a child, it can have an immense ripple effect within families and local communities. The good news is that the survival rates for pediatric cancer have improved, especially when it comes to the most common types. But we cannot be satisfied until we reach 100% survival for all children for every cancer, and that goes for adults too. That's why I'm proud to live in a state that doesn't just talk about progress, we invest in it. The funding allocated by the Governor and the Florida Legislature to launch the Cancer Connect Collaborative Incubator is a research investment that will bring together Florida's best minds in science, medicine, and healthcare to accelerate innovation in pediatric cancer treatment. This initiative is not just about the dollars, it's about breakthroughs. It will boost enrollment in pediatric clinical trials, expand education for families and healthcare providers, create networks of collaboration across children's hospitals and community clinics, which has been emphasized over and over in terms of its importance, and most important, deliver better treatment options faster to the children who need them most. As a member of the Cancer Collect Collaborative, I look forward to the proposals that will come forward from Florida specialty children's hospitals who are ready to lead this charge. Let's build a system where no family has to leave Florida to find cutting-edge care. Let's make Florida the place where every child with cancer receives world-class treatment, close to home, surrounded by their loved ones. My hope is that this is the beginning of reimagining how we fight pediatric cancer, powered by bold ideas, breakthrough technologies, and a belief that we can do better. Let's push the boundaries of what's possible, whether this means new immunotherapies, better genomic profiling, or innovative survivorship programs that supports families long after the last drop of chemotherapy. Because behind every pediatric cancer case is a child with dreams, a family with fears, and a community that's rooted in finding a cure. Let's give them answers, and let's give them the very best that Florida has to offer. Thank you.
Good morning. I never thought, the governor's a big baseball fan, but I never thought I'd be in a lineup that I'd be batting cleanup with the governor. So let me see if I can help. Good morning. I'm Michael Mayo, and I serve as president and CEO of Baptist Health, Northeast Florida's only community-based and locally governed health system. And I'd like to welcome all of you on behalf of our entire team, and especially our system board chair, Deb Pass-Durham, and our Wolfson Children's Hospital board chair, Aaron Wolfson, who are both here with us today. One of the Florida Specialty Hospitals for Children, and this is a historic day. This is a transformative moment, and I hope that with everything that's been said and the heartfelt words, make a difference in how you look at what this is happening. The governor has done such great work in doubling down on fighting cancer, and with this $30 million investment, kids will never have to leave Florida for the care that they need. So let me first say by saying thank you, Governor DeSantis. You have an unwavering commitment to health care and prioritizing cancer care in our state, and I hope you know that under his leadership, he has doubled, more than doubled, the monies that have been given to this research work, and that's a testament to his devotion to this work. This $30 million investment marks a pivotal milestone for our state to collectively advance care for children in our state. And First Lady, I want to thank you. You mentioned your visit here last December, where you met with me and the other presidents of the specialty hospitals, and that meeting sparked a moment, the statewide initiative and conversation, which was the turning point that has led to where we are today. And so thank you so much for your courage and for your leadership in this area. Surgeon General and our Secretary Harris, thank you for your leadership. You have marched right along in this partnership and have led the way and spoken for children in a very special way. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and others in our state to make sure this investment is used appropriately and that it addresses the 4 pillars of progress that our team has identified, which is program expansion, top talent recruitment, state-of-the-art infrastructure, and innovative research, which will get new things done for kids in Florida. And finally, and not finally, I want to recognize the members of our Florida legislature and especially our Northeast Florida delegation. Representatives Cayenne Michael, Dean Black, Sam Greco, and Senator Clay Yarborough. You have championed this critical investment and worked alongside us diligently, and I'm so grateful that you were able to do this and you're leading our region in Northeast Florida. As already been said, the Florida's 4 nonprofit specially licensed children's hospitals, which solely provide kids to children, have been identified, but I want to recognize them again. Johns Hopkins All Children's in St. Petersburg, Nemours Children's in Orlando, Nicholas Children's Hospital in Miami, and of course here at Wolfson Children's Hospital in Jacksonville. Each of these hospitals share a common mission. It's to ensure that Florida's children receive the highest quality care close to home, not leaving our state. As leaders in pediatric care, they're united, and I've watched them work together and been able to work alongside them to see their commitment to making Florida a national leader in childhood cancer research, treatment, and leading to cure. I want to take a moment to recognize my colleagues and my peers and the outstanding leaders they are of their institution. Alicia Schulhoff, President of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, Martha McGill, President of Nemours Children's Health Central Florida, Matt Love, President and CEO of Nicholas Children's Health System, and of course, our own Allegra Jaros, President of Wolfson Children's Hospital. Together, your hospitals represent the very best, and together, and I want to underscore the collaborative effort of working together, building something bigger than any one of us could have done by ourselves. And by our geographical location, we will build a future where kids can receive world-class cancer treatment right here in our state. No child will leave Florida for the care they need. Thank you for your leadership. There's a lot of people that make this work happen, but those that we could not do it without is those that give generously through philanthropic effort and support this work, and they're here today with us, and I'd like to recognize them for bringing life to this vision. They include Tom and Pat Baroe, Nick and Dana Elias, Don and Karen Wolfson, Melanie and Morgan Busby, and our good friends at CSX, Brian Tucker and Lysandra Borkin. Thank you for being a part of this. So I want you to know, today doesn't just mark a funding announcement, it marks a promise to the families of Florida and to the children of Florida. Over the next 5 years, Florida Specialty Hospitals for Children will expand access, elevate care, accelerate research, and attract, and this is important, to attract the world's top talent to come and practice and care for our kids in this state, right here in Jacksonville, Orlando, St. Petersburg, and Miami. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, First Lady, Dr. Lopato, Secretary Harris, Representatives Michael, Black, Greco, Senator Yarborough, and all of our partners, because the future of pediatric care starts now, and it starts here in Florida. Thank you.
Well, this is exciting. I mean, we're handing out the, the rundown of what happened when we signed the budget, and I think it's really great. I think the momentum is fantastic. We need to keep it going. We've had a lot of great support. There was some bumps in the road. I think there were some folks in the Florida House who didn't want to see these things fulfilled. I know a lot of the rank and file members that are here were supportive of it, but the reality is, this was not something that was easy. There was a lot of people that wanted to deep six this, even though it's been successful, even though people want to see progress in this regard. And I know we had some folks that were really fighting for this. I mentioned Senator Albritton, but I know that there were others, particularly in the Senate. So I want to thank them for doing that. This is a great achievement, just building off what we've done and our commitment, and we're going to do more going forward. But this is going to be meaningful, and I think it's just great for the state of Florida. So thanks for everybody who's been a part of this. And again, I recognize our children's hospitals who really play a critical role. And it is true, as our Surgeon General said, you care more about if your kid gets sick than anything else. That's just the nature of it. It's just, it's a tragic situation when you have these young kids that have to suffer from these diseases. And so to get to 100% survival rate, which is obviously the goal, that would be so meaningful for so many kids, but also for the parents and for the communities. And so we can't rest. We got to keep going. So thanks, everybody. I can take a couple questions before I get out of here. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Finn Carlin, actually, Jax, the producers back at my station. This is normally what's been talked about today.
I'll answer that. Does anyone have any questions about all this stuff here? Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Wanted me to ask about the viral video of the traffic stop conducted earlier this year by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Just if that's something that you have seen, and if you've... Well,
I haven't seen it, but I heard that it was debunked. What I heard was that this was out there. There was a narrative that was done, and then JSO provided the context, and things were a lot different. Now, I have not personally seen it, but that would not surprise me if that's what happens, because that's what happens in so many of these things. There's a rush to judgment. There's a desire to try to get views and clicks by creating division. And, I know the sheriff here. If people get out of line, he's going to hold them accountable. But if guys are being unfairly targeted as if they did something wrong because there's not enough context, then that's good. So I don't know for sure, but I have heard that once you provide context, that things are are different. And that has definitely been true around the country in recent years. I mean, you remember the Ferguson, Missouri. I mean, you had CNN anchors saying, hands up, don't shoot. Like, basically, the narrative was you had this guy, innocent, unarmed, has his hands up, and some rogue cop just guns him down. And they were saying race was the reason to do it. Turns out, even Eric Holder's Justice Department did a thorough investigation and said the officer acted appropriately under the circumstances. And so, you have these situations where people will want to make an issue. But I have every confidence in our sheriff here in Jacksonville that if there's anything that these guys are not living up to the standards, he's going to hold them accountable. But it seems to me like this is trying to create a narrative. Maybe I'll review it, at some point. But I kind of heard about it, then I heard the response. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of checks out to me. Without even knowing any of the facts, I just know how this stuff works, right? So,
Governor, school districts across the country are suing the president's administration about a $6 billion funding freeze on educational programs. How does that affect
which
Florida?
programs are they talking about?
Yeah, like
So here's the thing. I think what the administration is doing is they are not going to give funding to school districts that are going to pursue harmful policies and objectives. And so that's something that in Florida, you're required to honor parents' rights. You're required to have the core subjects and live up to our standards. And so I think that's probably what it's going to be. So I don't think there's going to be any issues in Florida for not following the rules of the road. I mean, yeah, we have some school districts that try to go off the reservation because some of the laws that the state has passed they may disagree with, but that's not the way this works, right? The states created the federal government. The states also created school districts and school boards under the Constitution. So when you have state laws, those have to be respected. I think what this is likely happening with the Trump administration, I need more specifics, but I think it's holding like school districts in California accountable because they're trying to do indoctrination, they're trying to do gender ideology, they're trying to do DE&I, and that's the policy of the federal government not to do those things. And so they're free to adopt that, but they can't also get federal funding if they're doing that. And I think that if it's that, I think that's totally appropriate. So we've addressed all those issues many years ago. Now, it's not like everyone's all hunky-dory and they're not all happy about all the things in every little nook and cranny. I mean, I was down in Broward County yesterday. We were announcing a DOJ audit of their county government. They're not necessarily see eye to eye with us. I was in Gainesville, which I remarked, I talk about this guy running for New York City mayor, and it's like, and I was like, come to think of it, he could probably get elected in Gainesville. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? Fine. But, and you can have those, but you have to follow the laws. And so in Florida, we have really unprecedented support for parents to be able to have their rights upheld and to ensure that these school districts are complying with. And look, what we're doing is like what 100% of people agreed education should be not too long ago. I mean, it's more recent that you've seen this massive tangent towards the partisanship and the political. I mean, the National Education Association is the largest teacher union. Go look at the stuff they're putting out on what their unions dedicate to. It's political stuff. It's talking about all these things that are really tangential from, okay, can we have good reading, good math, all that stuff. And I think that's been very harmful for American education. And California is obviously one of the worst offenders. I mean, I remember being out in California. I was doing some events, and I was kind of bemoaning. I'm like, how heartless was it of California to lock these kids out of school, for so long? I mean, you had athletes. We were talking about the other day down at New College. We said sports need to be going. That 2020 season, a lot of those kids, if they were in California, they wouldn't have played at all. I mean, we had people moving here for that, and I was like, oh man. And then they were out for longer than that, and this and that. And I had and most people agree that locking them out like California did was wrong, but some of them are like, well, some of these school districts, they'd be better off being at home because of how, what they're doing. And I was surprising to hear that, but I think as you look into there, so I think it's probably going to be focused on some of those areas of the country that really want education to be more ideological and partisan. And that's certainly not what we're going to use Florida tax dollars for. And interesting, on higher education too, I think the Trump administration is working hard to, get some of the rot out of higher education, the intellectual rot, the ideological rot. We saw a lot of that at places like Columbia University after the October 7th, 2023 attacks by Hamas in Israel, with how those campuses really erupted and how the administrators let the inmates run the asylum. We saw a lot of bad. Now, people that have followed this knew that there was a lot of rot there, but I think that really brought it to the surface for a lot of people. And so they're working hard to do things. We announced the new accrediting body that we're going to get certified, Florida leading, other states in the Southeast leading to be able to do it, because, these accreditors, how did they even get there? Like, nobody elects these people, and yet they have an agenda and they try to do. And our schools have clashed with, the accreditor here in the Southeast. They did try to, the media's like, oh, they didn't adopt DEI. They tried to adopt DEI, and the schools pushed back successfully, but they wanted to do it. So there was a lot of things going on there. But if you look at the news, I think came out yesterday, University of Florida Hamilton Center, they brought in like all these epic scholars, like people from Harvard and some of these places are leaving there to come to the University of Florida, because what the Hamilton Center is already achieving is, and it's very young, I think the sky's the limit, but it's the premier place for the study of Western society, Western thought, and the principles that underlie the American experiment. And that's a total lost art in so many of these other places around the United States of America, and some of the most historic and august institutions. They've really just turned away from what made this country unique, why Western civilization has had all these successes, and they've adopted some of these insular ideologies. So they can abandon the field. We'll double down on that, and we'll make sure that students that go through, they're going to have an opportunity to get the premier education when it comes to the pillars of Western civilization. It's like our kids are young. They're just finished second, first, and pre-K. You think about where they're going, to college, and I'm just like, I'm like, I am not sending them to Harvard or Yale on this trajectory. I cannot do that. And when I was there, it was crazy, but it's gotten a lot crazier. I can tell you that, way crazier. And so, I'm saying, hey, I'm a Navy guy. What about the Naval Academy? And First Lady doesn't like that as much, not because she's not a big supporter of the military. She just may not want our kids to be, to be in those situations. That's, I think, a mother's instinct on that. And so we'll see. But, we both talked to ourselves. We have so many great options now in Florida. Our kids, I was in Gainesville yesterday and just congratulating the folks there on the basketball national championship. And I had the pleasure of being able to go. It was exciting because it looked like they were going to lose for most of the game, for 38 minutes, and then the last couple it shifted, and so it was a really, really neat thing. And I said, we're encouraged by the potential for the football season, with Florida, but I said, we've been in Tallahassee since 2019, and so my kids, all they know is FSU. So they are like huge FSU. And that's kind of got known, and then some of my Gator friends would be like, man, why are you pushing them? I was like, trust me, I am not pushing. This is what they've done. So at the beginning of last season, we went to the Florida-Miami game at the Swamp. Our girls were I think they were in UF cheerleader outfits. My son had a Tebow jersey on. We thought, listen, you're going to experience the Swamp. It's special, and maybe, they'll do. And we weren't pushing that either, but we wanted to give them, expose them. And I can tell you, it was a rejection. They're so dyed in the wool with FSU on that. And so, it is. But we think about, look what they're doing at Hamilton. Like, I think like to have no tuition increases for Florida residents since I've been governor, $6,300, you can get one of the premier educations. Look what Florida State's done. Look, I mean, we overhauled New College down in Sarasota. You know, some of the parents out there that are concerned about, oh man, some of these universities are too crazy, you should take a trip to New College and what they've done. I mean, they've really leaned in on classical liberal arts education. They've recruited huge around the country, great scholars down there. But you pull up to like the main, because we did an event there, you pull up there, it's right on the water, just beautiful campus. And I'm thinking to myself, you have some of these places that are really good that I have a high regard for, like a Hillsdale College in Michigan. But you know, if you're a parent, would you rather be visiting Central Michigan in January, or would you rather be in Sarasota there? And so it's that. So you have that. So you have so many different options, which I think are really good. But part of it, and you even have people now, when I first became governor, if I talked to people from like, you know, like in finance, like New York City, they would never have even thought about Florida for higher ed. It just wasn't on their radar. Now, after all that's happened over these years, they look at what some of those universities up there are doing. They look at what our universities here. There's a huge contrast. And so, like, why would I want to mess with that when I know I can get something good in Florida? And that's a huge success, I think, that a lot of people, you know, have really worked hard to do. So that's a lot of information, but just saying that I think what the Trump administration is doing on both K-12 and higher ed is trying to hold the line for sanity and restoring sanity to our education system, because I think if we do that and we focus on, you know, the building blocks of what these students need, I think we're going to be much better off, both as a state like we have done, but also as a country. So, but in the meantime, you can count on us. There's a lot of people that are involved in fighting cancer, particularly pediatric cancer, throughout the state. But just know, in the state of Florida, we're going to be there. We're going to be fighting the fight alongside you, and we're going to do all we can to finally bring this issue to bed once and for all. God bless everybody. Thank you.